Hello, my dear friend, and welcome to the Spiritually Engineered Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the human experience from a spiritual perspective. Come on in, and I invite you to stay. So the other day, when I was in my last bi-monthly spiritual group meetup that I do with my good buddy Richard, the last session we had, something that came up for me that I wanted to use this episode to talk about was, which if you look at the title is pretty much what I want to get into, is talking about potential. And there's a lot of that for myself that I've had to work through, and even a lot of things that I'm still working through right now, and how. And so I'm at this place where I'm looking at this and then asking myself, how can I better work with my potential, right? And to start things off, potential is something that's as a result of our prophetic gift. We have these psychic abilities that really you can just distill down to communication, really. The prophetic part, to be able to sense ahead, the part within each of us that has a strong concern for the future, that's something that is legitimate. And so I know for myself, I can sense potential in other people, and I'm going to talk a bit about that. And then, of course, for me, where I run into issues and challenges for myself is the potential I sense into myself and where I could be, right? And so for me, the thing about the title, Overshadowed by Potential, man, really does speaks volume. When it comes to, I know one of the things for me, one of my maze, if you will, that I deal with at times is like the inner critic, right? The part that's like, why'd I do this? The part that likes to just, I'm not what I want to say like, but it has the habit of just judging myself, judging my actions and what I've done, or oftentimes what I didn't do, right? And it's always coming from this place of judgment, this replay, this pattern, right? That I haven't yet fully grown through yet. And so, but it was great for me to, be in that group meetup and for this to come about, because now at least I can narrow my focus a little bit with my intentions and how am I going about my day. And even just something that I can just work towards and getting better at with this. It's just like, and I think part of what I would lump in with all of this is what I consider toxic productivity, right? It's like I'm doing things, I have to do things, and then for what? And it's funny because it's like I had these conversations in my head, like, oh, I'm doing all these things, and then at the end of it all, it's like, and yet that inner critic will still say something like, oh, like I've done stuff, but then it's just like, okay. And for me, when I think about that, it's like, well, what's the tiny grain of truth in that? And I think when it comes to the inner critic, the genuine thing that I think, as far as the balance behind it, is constructive criticism, right? And when I think about that, I'm thinking about when I regroup my day. I take a moment typically before dinner time, before I start to really unwind into the evening, when I ask myself, what are my highlights? What did I accomplish? And I try to make this process as light as possible, mind you. And I'm at a place right now, even with that, it's been so much better, right? And there's the question I ask myself: is there anything I would do differently? And the point that I practice in this is just like, what would I do differently that would be more conducive to my time, so I could really feel, what are the actions I could shift, what I would do differently so that I can feel more fulfilled, more content. Not like that, oh, should done this and should do that. And, even just talking about that piece, growing up, I don't know if you can relate to this. I've definitely had a lot of my parents and adult figures in my life that sensed my potential and were They would tell me these things, do this, do that, because from their perspective, their point of view, how they see life, how they see success, and that projection onto me. And so for me, when I think about that pattern of that inner critic, I know it's deeply rooted, and it has been a result of people projecting themselves, imposing on into me and what I should and should not be doing. Now, when it comes to the shoulds and shoulds nots, I highly recommend, my friend, to check that. There aren't any shoulds or should nots. Now, there may be exceptions, of course, but I think generally, I think it's unhealthy, right? Like if I were to tell you, you should do this, you should do that, you should not do this, how would that make you feel? And even as I'm sharing these words with you, how does that make you feel? Not great, right? I don't know, or maybe not. Again, I can't assume. But if you were to tell me that, that doesn't feel good to me. That to me is like an imposition on my freedom. That's why, and that's the key there. Why I have my, with that with the shoulds and shoulds nots, because it's like everybody has their freedom to live how they want to move about how they want to, how they see fit. It doesn't matter, right? Even like as me as the observer, right? Who cares what I think about this individual? To try to say they should do this or should that, that's downright to me disrespectful, you know. And so when it comes to navigating relationships with myself and other people, the autonomy, the independence, the freedom, that's the thing that needs to be seriously honored, like from moment to moment, and so going back to just like, my potential, I think part of what also, where I feel overshadowed, is also there's this component of comparison, right? When I compare and I see somebody, like someone that I look up to and how they carry themselves, even like how I look at someone, how they work with their team of spiritual helpers, their guidance, and I'm like, that right there can really kill, is like a mood killer, if you will. That really can just turn things off, right? Like, because there's no point in comparison. First and foremost, because you are unique. I am unique. And because of our uniqueness, there is no need to compare, right? This idea of behind, all that, like things like that, right? And the only place comparison has would be for constructive feedback, which again, as I shared that earlier, that I think that's the tiny grain of truth when it comes to for me, when I look at my inner critic, where I feel like for the most part, it's always been like, I don't like that pattern. It's something that really gets to me, right? But it's like, okay, how can I, as I mentioned earlier, how can I work better with that? How can I work, with my potential, with my critic and whatnot? So there's no point in comparing, right? You and I are unique. We're autonomous. We're free. And that's been like some of the most important things that I've been really working on, is that live and let live. That live and let live. And that right there is like an important solution there, to just allow, again, not just for other people, right, but for myself. And gotta give that grace. And I think because of the, just given the nature and how things are out in the world, and in discourse and stuff like that, there's a lot again, like there's so much criticism out there. Although, and that's something too I try to be mindful of, and I have to be careful not to get myself caught up in. I remember sharing, and I'll share it here, especially when it comes to criticisms or any sort of feedback from other people. If, as you, as the listener, or as a person that perhaps they're trying to direct it towards, that's all suggestions, right? There are no commands. No one can just say, you do this, and you better, and then you do it, unless you give them that power. That power has to be given to that individual. They just can't ultimately like bypass your freedom and all of a sudden they're controlling you, kind of a thing. That's just not reality. It's just not. It's just not. And so going back to the potential piece, like I said, for me, I can definitely sense into myself, and I can sense in other people as well too. But me personally, I have more issues with potential myself rather than potential in other people in terms of like working with that. I'm pretty. It's funny. I can be pretty live and let live with other people. Genuinely, I feel like than with myself, and, that's like I said, because of this has been something that's come up recently. It's something that I want to work better towards and thrive in. I and all of this to you know why all this is. I think when it comes to this potential, aside from it, I'm mentioning it's a prophetic gift where we could be. I think it really does speaks volumes to our capabilities. Even if whatever potential you could sense within yourself and others, right? It's like in some sense there's inspiration. Like I feel inspired by that because it's like we can actually do so much for ourselves and be of service to others, and then for the people, they can vice versa type of thing. They can do the same for themselves and be of service to others. It's like to get like a glimpse of that or a feeling or some kind of impression, right? Can be something that can be a motivating force, I'm sure. And I feel like with that there has to be some kind of skill with that. I don't know. I think some sense is a skill, but then in other aspects, it's like kind of working that and unfolding it. Talking about the motivation piece here, and so with potential, I think it's important that, like happiness, I don't get so caught up in. It's like with the example of happiness, people always say, "I want to be happy, I want to be happy," and all this, and they look at that as if it's the end all be all. Being happy isn't the end all be all. Happiness to me is like a barometer. It shows to me how well am I doing in my relationship with myself. How well am I taking care of my own needs? And so when I do that, working on my important those needs and those wants of mine, and honoring them and taking time to fulfill them, while also of course part of that, fulfilling that also comes from me giving of myself to people, mind you. I'm saying that to say this isn't like a selfish endeavor, this isn't an ego trip, none of this type of stuff. But when I take care of all that and I feel that sense of fulfillment, the happiness will come about and will just express that. And so with the potential, what I see is that it happens as it should be it should be seen as a natural byproduct rather than just being focused on, oh, I need to reach my potential, because if I do that, I'm already setting myself up as like that the carrot on the string, and it'll be right there in front of me within grasp, so close yet so far, and it's just always going to be like that, a never-ending cycle. And all that does is strips away fulfillment and contentment from the now, from where I'm at now. And that's really what I want to get into in terms of like it's essential that I look at, potential, great, all the time. You can talk about the future and all this stuff, all the things. Okay, cool, whatever. I can talk about the future just like anybody else. I can fantasize about it. I can the whole nine. Okay, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Impression or not, it doesn't matter because things can change because of what happens now. What I do right now, I take into tomorrow. That to me is fact. You can tell me all about all these things. Yes, tomorrow's not ever guaranteed. Yes, okay, yeah. Yeah, I get it. My knowing really, it checks with my knowing. But what also I know is that is what I do right now is what matters the most. The future, whether it's my future, your future, but let's keep it to the personal, right? My future is dependent upon my present. It depends on my present. Without it, it's jack shit. Do you understand what I'm talking about? So this is why it's important not to get so caught up in potential, because that to me is a way of like living in the future. But we can't live in the future. The future doesn't exist. The past doesn't exist, right? Just as the past doesn't exist. And so with the future, so why the impression, the potential is there. So what that's about, it's getting a sense of where our trajectory is going based on what we're doing now. So I'm not trying to say, screw potential, forget the future type of thing, like, or forget, the impressions and whatnot. Like the impressions, the sense that you get that that we can sense within ourselves, that can really just get a sense of that, the trajectory. That's really why I think it's important that not to cast out. Like I said, potential is good to see it as a natural byproduct, not the focus, right? But sensing the potential is a good way of just sensing the barometer, because I do think it's important that as a soul, I, I have clear direction. I have to make sure I have my direction clear. That's part of me deciding for myself, claiming my freedom and autonomy, because if I don't do that, the laws of the natural world, the spiritual laws, has it like what that has taught me is that if I don't do that, somebody else will in the environment. And it doesn't have to be consciously, it can be unconscious. Somebody will decide for me if I don't decide for myself, be it my directions and all the little things I do on a day-to-day basis. That's why it's important that I lead my own life, why I believe that everybody needs to lead their own life. Because if they don't, somebody else will take the helm of their ship. And it's not always intentional. It can be unintentional, right? That's why I said it's the this is like part of the laws of the natural world, of the spiritual world, in my understanding of energy, my energy at least. I can only assume for other people and how it affects them, right? Just owning up to this is my opinion, my take. So having that set clear for myself, it's super super important. So so back to, like I said, all I have is the present moment. And that's the reality. That's where the kingdom of heaven presides. That's what Jesus was talking about. The kingdom of I'm like mumbling my words here. The kingdom of heaven is upon us. That's what he was talking about, in my opinion. It's here, right now, right? And that's something that we can enjoy and have fulfillment in right now. There's no need to have to, where I feel like where I get into the pitfalls with really my gripes with potential, is that it robs me of just enjoying where I'm at right now. And it's like it sets me up where it's like I start getting conditional, right? Where I'm looking for this external permission to just be. I don't know about you, that sounds stupid as I'm like sharing it, right? But it happens. My experience is this is what I'm experiencing, right? This is I'm sharing at this place of being detached and all of this, which is why I'm sharing all this. But when experiencing is telling me my experiencing is all of this, and just being honest with you. And again, it's like, and that's pretty much like part of the meat of why I think it's important to have a balanced relationship with potential, because people don't have to rob themselves of the fulfillment of where they are right now. Like if you find yourself operating in that external permission, I need external permission to do this, to do that. If you catch that within yourself, good. If you see that within yourself, great. Because then at that point, it's like there comes a point where you have to ask, okay, what am I going to do with it? And then after that, it's like, okay, now I got to practice my solution of what I'm going to do with it to address it. And so for me, it's again, this has been an ongoing process of working with this, feeling so caught up in, or letting this work against me, where I get so damn critical of myself. So enjoy the process. Enjoy where you are right now, because everything's going to be all right. Even with the information, the impressions we can get about the future, that can be all useful, and we can make that practical, sure, right? And that's the important key in all of that, is to work with that with the sense of balance, and let that not let that be the overarching overarching, let that be the deciding or ruling factor in anything, not allowing my future to dictate what I'm doing now necessarily. I mean, using the information from the future so that I can adjust in how I do things now, if that makes any sense. I might be saying the same thing there, but I'm hoping that I kind of, the distinction, right? It's working with, not working against, and all of that is the primary thing that I want to communicate. And ultimately, what I want to wrap this episode off to talk about why I think it's so essential to work with potential in a balanced way. And this is what I shared in that group, in that meetup that I had with my friend Richard, and that's spiritual timing. So let me preface by saying, before I get into talking about spiritual timing, part of why we're here as a collective and what I believe we all share in a commonality is that we're all here in this planet, in this school, to learn and grow. Everybody came here to work on something, whether they acknowledge it or not. That's my opinion, but I stand by that. It's part of my core belief why we're here. Because of the simple fact that the planet Earth, I see it as a school. That's what I believe it is there for, what it is at its core, from a spiritual perspective. We're all working on some things. We're all working on things that, it's just like how you go to school for anything, right? Like, you're looking for something, you're looking to address some things, you're looking, to work on, to strengthen, to improve, to grow in, right? Same thing here. But when it comes to growth, and frame it, and I want you to look at it from the perspective of your own growth here, right? So me and myself, my growth, I can't rush my own evolution. That's part of what spiritual timing is vastly about, is that I have my own timing in which I grow, just as much as everybody else. Some people can learn and grow faster than others, perhaps. But that's not the point. Again, be careful of comparison here, my friend, because we're all going our own path, and there isn't like a timetable. I need to be here, or I need to be there, or you need to be here. That's dumb. That's some outer ignorant concept that doesn't belong to you and I, frankly. Right? We have our own pace that we grow. We can't rush that. And I know this because looking at the natural world, take a flower, for example. How ridiculous would I look if I was like, all right, flower, grow fast, hurry up. I start poking it and I start like trying to stretch it. Oh my God. Or what, stretching, quote unquote. Or I just, whatever, I'm just like, trying to, basically imposing on a process that's natural, that's a gradual unfoldment, that's progressive, right? Rush has no place there. It's not natural to rush, right? Rushing is a result of really, pressure. It can be external. It can come from within, and that's something for me really does. It just, but a flower will grow at its own pace, proportionate to the nutrients, all the stuff that's happening now, right? The level of sunlight that it's getting and water and things like that. All those important factors, a lot of many things, right, that can affect it. And there are conditions that can help accelerate it. And I believe that also can apply to our own spiritual growth. But it can't be rushed. And really what the pressure, when I want to rush something, that's trying to apply force to something natural. And that doesn't work. That's resistance. And if I do that, well, worst case scenario, I blow a lot of time. But even then, it's like I'm blowing off a lot of time that I could have used. And also energy. Blowing off a lot of energy that I could have used to actually have done for myself. It's like wasting an exorbitant amount of time and energy to do absolutely nothing. Right? Wasting all this energy, wasting so much, it can even be exhausting. And all that time spent and have done nothing. And then stuck, feeling left unfulfilled, lack of contentment, and all that. And that's not cool. That's not joyful. That is not required. I'm going to make that important note. That is not required. So, to sum it up, when I'm working with my potential, I'm really being more patient with myself. And and I think when I can do a better job of like live and let live, as I can do more easily with people, to just do, share some of that with myself, and it's like I can only live a breath at a time. The force part, that's just, imagine like how that would sound, like in how the breath would express that, right? If I'm forcing and I'm rushing and potential, the breath would reflect that as. And when I did that, what that vibration that reminded me of? Survival, which I get is an important thing, but we're not here to just survive. We're here to thrive. We don't have to. I don't have to be in that to live purposely, to do what I've come to do, to be of service to myself and others. I don't have to carry myself like that. And so, working with my potential to help, in my as a tool to help me set my direction where I need to go. That's working with it in balance, right? And honoring my own timing. I can only grow as at the rate that I wish I can. I can grow faster, but I can accelerate. And I think for me on that topic, right, on accelerating, because that's very different than rushing. Because the rushing is trying to apply force. Accelerating, it's like there's a saying that I hope that it can actually give you my 2 cents on this, that I can explain it to you. It's like there's a saying, um, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And I remember I was in my mid 20s when I was experiencing my own acceleration, and I think I was really being involved, and I was like really operating with this sense of curiosity, and just there was a lot of interesting things, and I was just like, I felt like I was on this journey, but I wasn't like rushing to go anywhere. I'm like was trying to like navigate and figure out, okay, where do I need to go? Learning to work more in harmony with my intuition, my feeling part, my feeling nature. And I think it's because of me being open. I think that's part of what helped create that acceleration, you know? And so, I mean, there's a lot of other things I can go on about, but that's just my initial thoughts on that. And yeah, as I mentioned, it's such an important thing to make sure that don't let that be the overarching thing, right? It's just let that be the natural byproduct. And the more you start living in the now with more consistency and just looking for like this, and that's like enjoying the simple things in life and just taking the time and like and honoring those small wins. Oh my God, that's something I've been doing a lot more now, and I'm so glad, right? Honoring those small wins, right? Because how often do we do that? Because I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't do that often enough. I'm just starting to create a system where I'm actually journaling and putting down those small wins that I've done for myself. Not just the big stuff, but the little things, right? And make that incorporate that into my daily regrouping with my team, so that and I can look at it, when I get that intuitive sense to, or maybe I might make it into a routine. This is part of like making it practical here, perhaps, and feel free to utilize anything I'm kind of wrapping my head around and processing here, right? That's why I'm sharing what I'm here for. Just maybe I can put that in there so that I can really, because that's also another aspect of what the potential can do. It's like it can rob me of or blind me to like the things that I'm doing that are awesome now and that I have done. But then there's also the other side of the coin too, not to get so caught up in past, I don't know what they call it, like accolades or something, like getting so caught up in past achievements that I don't worry, that I don't bring myself back to what I'm doing now, right? So again, there's like the other side of the coin as well too. Like with the future, I can do the same thing and go off balance into the past as well. So like I said, the key is like the present moment where I'm at right now is where it matters most. Where I am right now and what I'm doing and how I'm doing right now is what matters most. And that's really what needs to take priority, right? And working, and when I can pivot from now as I work with my past and future, that right there is golden. That's moving with mastery. That's living practically, living spiritually. And so I'll leave it there, my friend. And yeah, I hope yeah, this has been an interesting one and a good one. And I'm glad that this has come up. And I'm glad to be sharing this with you, my friend, because I really truly think this is important, especially because when I can do this with myself, I can do this with other people. And and when I mentioned about can't rush the growth, because I'm sure perhaps you might be caught up in like perhaps in other people you care about and their potential, and you want to see them that way. But and if you find yourself, in that situation, where you feel like you can sense someone else's potential and you really want them because you care so much about them, you care to see people thrive, and that's awesome, right? But you got to remember, you can't rush their own spiritual timing, their own spiritual evolution. Think about that flower example that I share. It would be foolish to try to tell a flower, grow fast, and start poking it. Grow fast, what are you doing? Grow fast. Because all that time and energy being wasted on that could have been directed to do a lot more things that could actually really help yourself and perhaps that individual you care about move forward. That energy of slow is smooth, smooth is fast, like that shit. And so I'll leave it here, my friend, for you to think about. And just remember that your own spiritual timing, you can't rush that. And as you're going through the cycles, I would even go as far as to say, keep that in mind. And to me, I'm at this place where it's like, I want to stay in alignment. I want to stay on time. I want to align with my spiritual timing and my own spiritual evolution. I just want to align with that and stay with that. I want to ride my groove, my wave. No delay, no rush. That could be a spiritual goal. Something to think about. Again, take it or leave it. It's up to you. And so this has been another episode of Spiritually Engineered. I'm your host, Alvin Cepeda, signing out. And as always, take care, my dear friend.